Hi, class. I hope you are enjoying the day so far. I am here with you to talk about the writer Thomas Lux and his poem from 1986, The Swimming Pool. Okay. Now, I really love this poem. I feel like it's very thought-provoking. So, right, as I mentioned, the poem was published in 1986. And so in the 1980s, right, that was during the years that Ronald Reagan was president, right? He was president for 2 terms. And it was a time when the economy was actually doing really well, right? The stock market was taking off. A lot of people were making a lot of money. Okay. But at the same time, right, there were a lot of people who were really struggling. So homelessness was at an all-time high. Right. So we see in the 1980s the disparity between the rich and the poor. Right. So, the saying, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. So we really saw that, right, that income inequality in the 1980s. And I think that that was part of the inspiration for this poem, right? Because we'll see, right, that Thomas Lux is so brilliant in the way he uses the poem to create a comment about human nature, right? A very disturbing, I think, comment about human nature, right? So the question being, why is it that we tend to blame people who are below us on the social hierarchy, right? So for example, we see in today's world, right, sometimes people in power blame poor people, blame immigrants, right? Rather than direct our anger and our frustrations, right, at the people above us on the social hierarchy, right? People who have more power and more control. So we see in this poem, right, that Thomas Lux creates this microcosm, right? So he takes this very traditionally innocent, happy image, right? A swimming pool, right? With children, hanging out at a swimming pool. What could be more wonderful than that, right? Well, we see actually the reality, right, in the way these children are interacting with each other. And it is a very short poem, so he does a lot, right, in this very brief poem. Okay, so I am going to say a little bit about Thomas Lux, the author, and then we will take a look at the poem and say a little bit more about it, right? Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen so I can pull up what I wanted to say about Thomas Lux. So let me move me out of the way here. All right, so there he is. Thomas Lux, you can see that he lived from 1946 to 2017. He died at age 70 of lung cancer, and he is an American poet. Some more pictures of him. So I do know that he had working class roots, right? His father was a milkman. His mother worked at Sears, right, which was a department store. And he worked as a creative writing professor at Sarah Lawrence College in New York for 27 years. So the bulk of his life. He also was married twice, and he has one daughter. And these are some of his collections of poetry, right? In case you're interested in checking out more of his work, I, highly recommend that you do so. Okay, so let me go ahead and go over to our poem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through the poem. It is short, and then I will go back and talk about the things that really stand out to me so that you can think more about those things and hopefully write about them on our discussion board. Okay, so let me go ahead and pull up the poem. No, I don't want that. I want the poem. Sorry, class. Okay, let me go back here. Sorry, class. Technical difficulties. Okay, I got it now. Here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so here is the poem. Let me go ahead and just read through it. The Swimming Pool. All around the apartment swimming pool, the boys stare at the girls, and the girls look everywhere but the opposite, or down or up. It is as it was 1,000 years ago. The fat boy has it hardest. He takes the sneers, prefers the winter so he can wear his heavy pants and sweater. Today, he's here with the others. Better they are cruel to him in his presence than out. Of the five here now, three boys, two girls, one is fat, three cruel, and one, a girl, wavers to the side, all the world tearing at her. As yet, she has no breasts. Her friend does, and were it not for the forlorn fat boy whom she joins in taunting, she could not bear her terror, which is the terror of being him. Does it make her happy that she has no need right now of ingratiation, of acting fool to salve her loneliness? She doesn't seem so happy. She is like the lower middle class, that fatal group handed crumbs so they can drop a few down lower to the poor, so they won't kill the rich. All around the apartment swimming pool, there is what's everywhere: forsakenness and fear, a disdain for those beneath us rather than a rage against the ones above, the exploiters, the oblivious and unabashedly cruel. Okay, wow is all I can say. So let's get more into this now. So as I had mentioned, the setting, right? So we get the setting from the title, a swimming pool, right? And I notice in line one, right, that there's an abbreviation, which is kind of rare in a poem, right? So we see APT, which we know stands for apartment. Okay, now every time I read this poem, I'm always kind of puzzled. Why? Right? Why didn't Thomas Lux just write out the word apartment? Why abbreviate it? After all, this poem is written in free verse, which means he wasn't counting how many syllables per line, right? So he could have easily written out the word. Okay, so my thought is that, maybe he abbreviated it to call attention to it, right? Look at me now talking about it, right? I'm drawn to that word. And why? Might he call attention to it? Well, he's emphasizing the fact that this swimming pool is in an apartment complex, right? It's not, for example, it's somebody's house in their backyard. This is a shared resource, right? This is a swimming pool that people who live in this building can use. Now, what does that suggest? Well, number one, it gives us a little bit of insight, I believe, about, say, the economic status of the characters that we're about to read more about, right? That they live in an apartment. Okay, now what's significant about that? Well, it shows us that they are most likely middle class, right? Maybe even lower middle class. They're not living in a house. They're living in an apartment. Okay, so that we get. And then we also see this setting, right? A swimming pool, right? We all know, right? When you go to a swimming pool, typically you're in a bathing suit. And right, when you're in a bathing suit, your body is more exposed. You maybe feel more vulnerable, right? You're standing there in your bathing suit, people are looking at you, and we see that from line two. The boys are staring at the girls. Okay. Now, right, when you're young, right, we don't know exactly what age these children are. I'm guessing puberty, right, early teens, because we realize, right, that one of the girls, it's mentioned that she has no breasts, right? So she's, maybe slower at going through puberty. Maybe she's starting a little bit later. But so we get the sense that these children are, preteen. And we know, right, that during that time period, we are very self-conscious, right? Very self-conscious about our physical appearance. Okay, so this is a setting that we can say is actually very fraught with tension, right? These children in their bathing suits at this pool. Okay, now what else do we learn here? Well, there are 5 characters present, right? So 3 boys and 2 girls. And what do we learn about these characters, right? Is there any character development? And yes, there is actually a little bit, right? Because we are told that 3 of the children are cruel, and that the other 2, right, one of them is a fat boy. Okay, and let's say a little bit about this boy, right? Because Thomas Lux points out that he has it hardest. Okay, why? Because we see he's bullied, right? Thomas Lux uses the word the sneers, right? Why is he being bullied? Well, it's also implied that it's because of his physical appearance, right? And that in the winter, he feels more comfortable because in the winter, he's wearing heavy pants and a sweater that maybe cover his body, right? But now he's in his bathing suit, right? Calling attention to his fatness, right? That he's different. Okay, so, we feel bad for this boy. And then the other girl, or the other, excuse me, character that we learn a little bit more about is one of the girls. Okay, so we see that this one girl, it says, she wavers to the side, all the world tearing at her, right? Because she has no breasts, right? Her friend does. Okay, so, right, we maybe remember when we're that age, we're, not only extremely self-conscious about how we look, we tend to, unfortunately, compare ourselves to others. And so we see that in this girl, right? She's very self-conscious. She is in a very vulnerable position, right? And I feel like, in a sense, she is the main character of this poem, right? I also view her as a symbol, right? Because she has a decision to make, right? And what is this decision? It's implied, right? It's not directly stated, but the decision would be, should I join in this sneering, this taunting, this bullying of the fat boy or not? Right? Because she's kind of wavering to the side, maybe suggesting that she's sort of thinking about what she's going to do. Right? She's kind of trying to stay out of this. But we see, right, that this decision that she makes, right, is to join in the taunting, right? Because it says she joins in. Okay. Now, right, she could have, again, this choice, she could have protested. She might have said, hey, stop bullying, be nice, please don't be cruel. Right? She could have stood up for him, right? So she could have elevated the discourse, right? But she doesn't. Okay, so she joins in the taunting. And why? Why does she do that? Well, Thomas Lux gives us some insight because he writes, right? She could not bear her terror, which is the terror of being him. Okay, now what does that mean? She does not want to be on the bottom of this social hierarchy, right? That the fat boy is on the bottom. He's the source of the taunting, or not the source, excuse me. He's the target of the taunting. He's the one that everybody's picking on. And she does not want to be that person. She feels as though she's just a little bit above him, but the terror of being that person. And so it's easier for her to join in the taunting. Why? Right? It says here, because of her fear. Right? She doesn't want to stand out. So it's easier for her to just participate and join in this taunting. And I feel like what an interesting statement Thomas Lux is making about power dynamics between people, right? Why do so many of us do that? Right? It's easier for us to do things like that. Is it the right thing to do? No, it's not. Okay. Now, I feel like where this poem gets really, really good is this last part, right? So we see, right? How does the girl feel as she joins in the taunting? Not good, right? Because it says, does it make her happy? No, she doesn't seem so happy. She doesn't enjoy this. And then, right, this is the really brilliant technique that Thomas Lux uses, the simile. And remember, right, a simile is when a writer uses a linking word like or as, right, a connecting word to compare two things. And so Thomas Lux says, she is like the lower middle class. That fatal group handed crumbs so they can drop a few down lower to the poor so they won't kill the rich. Okay, so he's making a statement here, right? A larger statement. Again, the swimming pool, these children at the pool, this is meant to be a microcosm, right? What does that mean? A world in miniature. So he's using these children to make a larger statement about, say, American society and the way in which in American society, as I said, right, the people who are on the bottom of the social hierarchy often torment and blame others who are worse off, such as immigrants and poor people, rather than raging at the people above, right? The wealthy people, the people in power who are really doing the exploiting. Okay. And then that last, right, sentence of the poem, right, where he says, all around the apartment swimming pool, there is what's everywhere. And then he really seems to state the main point, right? This forsakenness and fear, this disdain that we feel for the people beneath us. Okay, rather than raging against the people who are above us, right? And I love that he uses that word oblivious, right? These rich, wealthy exploiters maybe don't even care. They don't even notice. They're oblivious to all the suffering, right? That they're indirectly causing. Okay, so what a brilliant poem. You know, it's so short, but yet I feel like it makes such a profound statement about, again, power dynamics among people. Now, I also, wanted to say that this poem, it always makes me think about this very famous quote, right, from Malcolm X. And since I'm sharing my screen, I already have the quote open. I'm just going to pull it up here. I hope you can see it. So Malcolm X said, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. And, like I said, this just like reminds me of what Thomas Lux is pointing to in this poem. So I just thought I would share that. Again, it's just kind of a thought-provoking connection. Let me stop sharing. Okay, so I'm going to end this video now. I hope you enjoy Thomas Lux's poem. I really look forward to reading your thoughts on the discussion board, right? This video, I'm really just scratching the surface. There's so much more here that we could discuss and really get into. And I hope that some of you will do so on our discussion board. Okay, so that's it for today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.